products effectively, even for beginners. We're going to talk about how to validate your ideas without wasting months and how to bring your first product to market. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to tell you about my email list. I've been emailing daily authority tips, how to build your authority, a very short 2-minute tip on how to build your authority. I've been sending that every day. If you go to therecognizedauthority.com, you can find that. And now let me welcome my guest, Rene Morozowich. Rene,
Hey,
this is we've met in person. We've spoken so many times. You were in my mastermind group, the Authority Labs. I feel like I know you so well, and I'm delighted
yeah,
to
we
have
go way
you.
back.
Yeah, we go way back, and I'm delighted to have you on the show.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited to be here.
Let me ask you about digital courses because I think when everybody thinks about digital products, courses seems to be the one that everybody brings up. Why is it digital courses? Why is that the go-to?
I don't know. I don't know if it's kind of like a holdover. I was thinking about this before. Like it's some kind of holdover, to maybe when like online courses, when education kind of went that way. But I'm not sure why. But for service providers, there are a ton of other options. And I don't think that courses specifically are a great way to go, at least to start with. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly why everybody's like, oh, course, without thinking of all the other things that you could sell.
Yeah. So you help people to create their first digital product so that they can,
Yes.
and part of it is about this additional income stream. And, like the dream for everybody is make money while you sleep, right?
Yes. I don't like to call it passive income. I don't, that's not exactly how it works. So kind of just get that out of your mind too. But yeah, I guess making money while you sleep, not that you don't do anything during the day, to prepare that product or to troubleshoot the product or to, continue to develop it. But yes, in theory, you could get a sale while you're sleeping or while you're at the grocery store.
So I'm really interested in, okay, so you help people create these digital products, and I'm really interested in all of the potential digital products that I could create. And I have been kicking the can down the road on doing, like, I've been thinking, people have asked me, hey, could you turn your book into a course? Or I'd like to have, start your own business podcast course or something like that, that I could have for sale. But it just seems like a lot of hassle, and I'm not sure if I want to take the time to go and do that, and if it would be worthwhile. Can you talk to me a little bit about figuring out the validation part of the mix? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. So you already have a great piece of the puzzle. So people are asking you for something. They know that you're an expert in something. They know that you can help them. And they've seen that in various ways, right? Like your book, your podcast, other things. So they're coming to you saying like, "Hey, can you help me do this? Can you give me a little bit more than you're already giving me?" So I think that that's a great marker, a great piece of validation there to have people asking you for something. When people are just like, oh, I want to create a course about whatever, like I did, that's great. And it's a great kind of learning experience, but you're probably not going to see the return that you want in that, you're going to spend months creating it and you probably won't get any sales or many sales at least. So, having people ask you is a great first step. Now, with your course specifically that they're asking you about that, I would think a great way to see if it is valid would be to run it live, right? So you could say, like, hey, we're going to do this in 6 weeks. We're going to meet weekly. Here are the parameters. And then you would prepare the lesson for the week and then see where people are having trouble. So see what people are asking, see what you forgot to include, see what they actually don't care about, and then you can create that course over the span of those 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is, and then you can see like, okay, was it worth it? Did I like it? Did they like it? Were they successful? And then maybe you can take some of the materials or outlines or things that you've already created and turn that into something that you run evergreen instead of running live.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And what that would avoid me doing is procrastinating about I tend to procrastinate about around that content creation. One of the reasons why we're recording this episode live is because it stops me from procrastinating about editing and all of that that comes with it. It's live, it's done. so
Yeah,
be it.
exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you don't have to create everything up front, right? So you don't have to create a whole course. You're getting that validation as you go. All you have to do is week one. Maybe an outline would be nice, but week one, you show up, you're ready, and then you kind of go from there. So yeah, having someone be on a Zoom call, like, yeah, you don't want to let them down. But if it's just you in your house, you're like, oh, client work, oh, this other thing, other things come up. So it's, I know we've talked about this before. It is important, but not urgent. So it makes it a little bit more urgent when somebody is there waiting for you to teach them something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I think about a lot about this. In content creation is the important versus urgent.
Mhm.
If it's a ringing telephone or a screaming child,
Yes.
the urgency, you have to go and drop what you're doing to resolve that. But if it's going to the gym or creating
Mhm.
content, writing a chapter of a book, that's never urgent. Or creating an online course, that's
Right.
never urgent. So okay, let's dig into let's dig. Okay, maybe we should have a look at the overview first.
Mm.
Because you talk to a lot of people about the different types of products. Can you kind of give me the lay of the land? What other options can people have for products rather than just online courses?
Yeah, okay. So if you are a service provider and you've been working with clients for a while, you've probably developed some frameworks, some materials, maybe videos or audio or templates or guides, things that you work with your clients, you go through with your clients that you could package up, kind of take you out of it, put a little bit maybe more explanation in it or some, kind of guidance that you could sell as we've talked about like done with you, done for you, DIY. So kind of take yourself out of the equation, but things that you've already created: video, audio, templates, guides, workbooks. So I would look there first. And I've seen a lot of audio lately, actually a lot of private podcasts. Have you seen this at all? Have you talked about this, like this huge uptick in private podcasts and private audio courses?
Yeah, and it's something that I've been experimenting with a little bit. I actually created a private podcast. I took it down because I wasn't happy with the provider, but the con as a concept, I think it's a good concept. So, for the listener, the private podcast is where you can create a podcast that you can give access to, either for people to pay for it or maybe to opt in for an email with their email address, and they get access to this podcast that isn't publicly available. So it's an interesting one as well. And as a podcaster, I find that very easy to create a podcast. That's something I can do in a couple of days. So yeah, I found that interesting.
And it's also the overwhelm. So the overwhelm of sitting down and creating a course with all that it entails versus the overwhelm of sitting and down and creating, an audio podcast or private podcast, something like that, audio course, whatever you want to call it. But it's the same lack of overwhelm on the other side. So when I buy a course and I sit down to do it, I'm like, oh my God, 500 modules, 57 workbooks, 800 videos. It's hard for me personally to wade through all of that. So it's hard for you and hard for me. But yeah, listening to a podcast on a walk and learning something, that's like way easier, way easier. So I'm more likely to do it. I'm more likely to actually absorb some of that information. So I like to think about the overwhelm factor too. And maybe I'm more overwhelmed than other people are, but I kind of feel like we're all, we all want to learn and we all want to be in a different place and, make more and be more productive and all that stuff. So it can get overwhelming.
Yeah, and so when I think about digital courses and online courses, I would want to create something that is quite comprehensive. Like that would be the way I would want it to be, because it would,
Mhm,
like, I would want to create something that I would want to pay for. So, and if
mhm,
I was paying for something, I would like to have the video modules. I don't want it to be just basically a paid for YouTube video. I would
mhm.
want there to be, downloadable, printable workbooks or, checklists and things like that. And so I know that if I was doing it myself, I would want to have to create those kind of side assets or kind of complementary assets for it as well. And that just makes it bigger. So the other thing that I was thinking about with online courses is like, what's the scope? Where do you stop? Like, what's too big? What's too
Mhm.
small? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's common. It's common for us for a number of reasons. One, we're jazzed about whatever it is we're talking about, right? Like I'm jazzed to talk about digital products. You are jazzed to talk about specializing and creating content, and we have all of that inside of us. And anybody who shows interest, we're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to tell you everything. Like here's everything I know." And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that, you know that you're like, "Wait, I don't have this framework. I don't have this, this understanding that you do. I haven't been doing it this long. It is too overwhelming for me." So I taught a course a couple years ago, and I did this whole speech on SEO, and at the end, somebody said, "What is SEO?" And I thought, "Okay, wait. I got so you have to bring it back, right? When you're working with clients one-on-one, you have to bring it back. You have to, you're here. I don't have much spatial room here in my video, but like you're here, they're here. Like you got to bring it back. But you can give people small wins over time, right? So give them like the first thing they need to know, and you can package that up. Maybe 2 videos, maybe 1 workbook, right? Whatever it is. And then let them get that win. Let them learn and kind of progress to the next. I don't know if you want to call it like milestones. Like my brand is all about kind of like journeys and whatnot, like to the first milestone, and then build them the next thing. Like you don't need to build all the things to begin with. You can build them as you go. And I actually have heard some of this from some other people, that kind of breaking these up can be better from a sales perspective, right? So you can bundle the things together. You can let people pick and choose what they're interested in. And then you can see, okay, everybody's really interested in this. I thought they would be interested in that. And then that informs your future products. So those are my thoughts. I know I get excited about. See, you can already tell me I'm talking faster because I'm jazzed about it, because I want to tell you everything that I know about this. So, but again, like I have to bring it back. You have to bring it back. We gotta,
Yeah,
meet
it's
the audience where they are.
it's this thing of where we create this kind of like fire hose of deluge of
Yes,
information. Yeah, yeah,
yes. We're
and
like, ooh,
I've
somebody's
definitely been guilty.
interested. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, okay, let's see. Let's talk about real numbers then, because I'm interested in like there's a limited amount of time that we have. So we have to be realistic about, okay, we have choices, and every choice that we make is an opportunity cost. We're not going to do something because we've chosen to do something else. And so if I choose to make an online course, however small, I'm choosing not to do something else. And so it needs to have a return on investment, whatever that looks like. So let's talk about, pricing and things like that. You're talking about and because a lot of the people who are listening to this are doing high ticket custom services like one-on-one
Mhm.
services, and then they're looking at people selling $5 ebooks and $7 courses and stuff like that. It's particularly on Udemy. The price points are incredibly low when I look at the
Right.
online courses. Can you talk to me a little bit about pricing and how to make it actually worth your while?
Right. So there's no specific, like, here's how to price your product. However, I would say that if you want to figure out how to do it, that launching something smaller is going to let you go through the whole process one time so that you know what to expect for the future. So if it takes you 3 months to launch a template that's, I don't know, $47, maybe it's a template with a video, $47, whatever it is, that is going to be a better experience for you than taking 2 years to launch a $500 course that doesn't sell. So maybe you're not making a ton of money on that $47 product, but you understand you've done a complete cycle now. You know, next time, okay, I didn't do this right, or oh, I did that right. I'm going to do that again. So I think that it's worth it to, we've talked about running before too. Like, why would you run a marathon first? Why wouldn't you just run a 5K? Just kind of see how it works out for you, because there's so many things you don't know. Like as a service provider, you're used to jumping on a Zoom call, right? And kind of wooing the person. And then you're they are maybe more likely to buy your high ticket service, but you're not there whenever they're reviewing your marketing materials for your $47 product, because you can't be there, because that's not worth your time. So you really have to look at, yeah, solving that one problem well an important problem for that person. And again, just kind of going through that whole process once, I think is really helpful. And then you can, kind of go from there. So I really want people to launch those first products so that they can continue to see if they like it, I guess.
Yeah, so let's there's so many different aspects we can take. So now I'm a content creator, and I've gotten quite experienced with creating content, which is why we're doing this live. And thank you for coming on and doing this live. And this will then be packaged up. It's going to be on YouTube as a live video. It's going to be on Facebook and LinkedIn where people can watch it. And so it's very easy for me to create like video content like this very quickly. But I know that for a lot of people, creating video in particular is difficult because they don't have the camera set up, they don't have the lights set up, they don't have the microphone and all of that. So if somebody is starting out with that, where would you say, look, start off with Canva and create a PDF, or where would you go?
I would look at where you're most comfortable first. So if you love spreadsheets and you have 50 spreadsheets that you've used with your clients, like look at that first. Later, yeah, if you want to dive into video or try it out, that's totally fine. If you love audio or you hate audio, or you love writing or you hate writing, look at what you already like to do and start there. So yeah, I don't think that saying like everybody has to do a video product is great, because not everybody likes video. Because what'll happen is, one, you won't want to do it. So two, you probably won't do it. Or three, if you do it, it's not going to be great, because that's going to show through, and your audience is likely to see that. They're like, oh, this isn't that great of a product, because you're not seeing that same enthusiasm in the
Mhm.
product. So I would stick with what's familiar to you, what you like the best first, and then yeah, if you want to expand later, you totally can.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd say about video and audio is get some experience with doing it where you're doing it unpaid first, so that
Yes,
you're doing it,
yes.
live, create some YouTube videos or do some
Hmm.
live streams, but basically get some reps in first
Hmm.
on where you're not actually charging people to access it before you get into charging for it, because that will help give you confidence as well, and it'll give you a good understanding of the tech issues and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so what else is important to think about when somebody is thinking about, like, somebody's in my position, maybe they're an expert, but they haven't really created a lot of products. What would you advise them if they're thinking, like, if they're particularly if they're doing one-on-one services and it's high ticket, maybe they've got some sort of independent consulting business, but they're thinking about starting that. Like, how do they figure out what's right to do?
So I would look at maybe who your audience is first. So I have a podcast episode about this. There's three types of audiences that I recommend for service providers. So it could be your peers. So you have, set up your business over a number of years, and you want to sell that knowledge, those procedures, those processes to your peers. So that's one area. Maybe you have great connections, maybe you go to conferences, like you have kind of a built-in audience for that. So that's one group. The second group would be the DIY crowd. So people come to you, they want to work with you, but they can't afford you. Maybe they're new in their business or they're bootstrapping, whatever it is. They they could benefit from learning from you. However, they just can't afford your one-on-one services. So that's another group. The third group of people are people who can afford you, they're just not quite ready yet. So they'll be ready soon. And maybe there's something that you can sell them to help them get ready, so that when they come to you, they've already opened their wallet, they're really ready to go. And that puts you in a better position. So I would think about who is that group that you want to serve the most, and then what are their most important problems. And you can just ask them, right? You can just ask anytime you have, let's say you want to serve that DIY crowd, anytime you get somebody who can't afford you, say, okay, what would you benefit from? Like, this is where the validation comes in.
I love that, and I was caught off guard because I literally just started to write that down. that's that's now something I do with my email list is I send an email to my list probably once a quarter where I do some sort of survey asking people what they want. Um,
Mm,
what I have not done is really segment them into kind of like the DIY market, or maybe the slightly more affluent market or more advanced market. But maybe that kind of segmentation would be useful as well,
mhm.
based on this. The other thing I was thinking, I was thinking about the. Let me see. I've lost that train of thought. Sorry. Um,
That's okay.
okay, so let's talk about creating courses. And I found that in the past I created a lot of content for my peers, but I wasn't selling to my peers. I was creating
Mhm.
content, and so how can I find out if that's actually going to make money? Because my peers didn't want to work with me. They didn't want to hire me to build their websites, but they found it interesting the stuff that I was posting, and they were
Mhm.
congratulating me for the great blog post. But they weren't ever going to become my clients. So I found
Right.
that working with my peers was a bad idea. Can you talk to me a little bit more about how you think about that?
Yeah, so I would say if you're going to sell to your peers, if you have something to sell and you're going to sell to them, that's yeah, where that segmenting would come in, or creating a completely different website altogether, like a different brand, a place where it's me selling to my peers versus me selling to my clients. So that's an important distinction to make. You don't want to just add all of that to one website, because when potential clients come, they're confused that you're trying to sell them something that doesn't apply to them. So if you're selling to DIYers or potential clients, yeah, you enroll that all into your existing website. But I would say have a separate place where you're talking to your peers specifically. So, but if you don't want to sell to your peers, that's fine. Maybe you don't have something to sell. You can still talk about those things and they can still congratulate you, I guess. But yeah, I would kind of mark them as a separate category of people that when your whatever launches, that yeah, maybe you don't sell or send them the messages, or maybe you do. That's totally fine too. But yeah, kind of understanding who your buyers are, I think, is important. Looking through what you're doing and who you want your buyers to be.
So let's talk about the next step then. Like, what happens after validation? So you figure okay, I know that people are gonna want this, based on these conversations that I've had, and now I'm looking at a blank Google Doc or a blank sheet.
Yeah.
Like, how do we go
Yeah.
from that to product?
Well, I would say you probably don't have just a blank Google Doc. You probably have something somewhere. So we talked about those templates and frameworks and whatever. I would look through what you already have, communications with past clients, if that's something that you're going to build. So yeah, that blank doc is very intimidating. So go look and see what else you have already that you can kind of fold in, past social posts, past emails, things that you can kind of bring together, will make it a little bit easier for you to start. I would also say earlier. So I say like earlier in the week, early in the month, early in the year, early in the day. Those are all better times for you to work on this product, mapping out where you plan to go with the product, accountability. I would say, like, if there's something that you always do, we talked about exercising. If there's something that you always do, like exercise, what ask yourself, like, what makes it so that you do that every week or every day? Like, is it because you put your clothes out? Is it because you have a buddy that you meet? Is it because you have a trainer who you're paying? What are the reasons that allow you to do that? And see if you can apply similar reasons, you know, to this product. Can you let your audience know that you're working on this? Can you sell the first module ahead of time? There are a lot of things that you can do to kind of like help yourself along, instead of like, oh, I'm going to go bunker down for 6 months, catch you later. And then, 5 months and 5 days, you're like, oh crap, I better get started.
Yeah, kind of like forced accountability because you've
Yeah.
you've you've said you're working on it. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. I like that. One issue that I have, and maybe I'm jumping around a little bit here, but
Okay.
one thing you said just triggered. How do I know whether what I create should be free, as in free content, like for example this podcast or video, or whoever people are consuming
Mhm.
this, or whether something should actually be a paid product? How do I differentiate between those? Because I create a lot of products, and I create a lot of content, and some of that could be paid potentially,
Mhm.
but I typically will just default to putting it out for free otherwise.
Mhm. Some people put things out for free because they're scared to put a price tag on it, because then if people don't buy it, then people take it personally. Like, oh, they didn't buy that. That means they don't like me. And none of that is true. So, like that whole thing, it's a big, that's not a true thing. So I would say don't be afraid to put a price tag on things, but also don't don't tie yourself so much to some specific result, right? So like if you're trying to lose weight, you can't just say like I want to lose 10 pounds. Like you can only do the things to try to lose the 10 pounds, right? You can only change your diet. So you can only do the things ahead of time, but the result is just the result. There are factors outside of your control. So don't tie yourself too much to it. Like I would say give yourself kind of like a time frame and a testing and kind of look at it as maybe a beta. Like here's a beta. When you call it beta, everybody's expectations are a little bit lower, you know. So I think there's some ways that you can look at it, and also just try it. Like just try it out, and don't be afraid to market it. A lot of people launch and they're like, "Hey, I have a product." Like you got to tell people about it. You have to market it. I just did a podcast episode about this, like ways that you can market your product. Don't be afraid to market it. And then if it doesn't sell, you can ask people like, "Hey, why didn't you buy this?"
Hmm.
And not like, "Hey, why didn't you buy this?" But like, did this not solve an important problem for you? Was this not the right time for you? See if you can get some of that feedback and validation again, and then you can pivot, do something else.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Um, and I like the control the controllables, and
Mhm.
we can typically control the inputs but not the outputs.
Yes.
So control the inputs that you can, and
Mhm.
then the other thing is the selling and the marketing part. And let me ask you, like, what does that look like? If let's say you create, and you talk about templates earlier. Let's say you create a template that's based on a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Right. So somebody could potentially either, make a copy of your Google spreadsheet if you made it available for them, or you might give it to them as a PDF or something that they can then use themselves. But let's say that's your product. Like, what's the process that you would actually go through to put that for sale? Like, what tools would you use? How would you describe it? Do you put it on your website? Is it on a third party? How would you do that?
Mhm. Yeah, so the first thing I like to look at is what you're already using. So if you're already using something that you like, some software product that you like that allows you to sell products, then I would start there because that's the easiest. Then you don't have to buy another piece of software, learn another piece of software. Yes, you may not have investigated how to sell a product in the software that you're already using, but the learning curve will probably be easier for you. So look at what you're already doing. I would also say if what you already have does not work, like let's say you're using an email marketing platform that doesn't allow you to sell and your website doesn't have any e-commerce capabilities, I would probably look at like a quicker third party type option like Gumroad or Lemon Squeezy or something like that. I had a client who looked at those. We actually set up products in all of those, and she found that it didn't actually work for her. So she ended up creating a website and installed WooCommerce. She was familiar with that, and she can do some SEO and things like that. So it may be that you just have to try a product or two before you know, okay, this is the right one for me. And again, part of it is you're trying to validate that people will buy this product. So that platform might not be it might not be the end of the world if you pick one and then change it later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have a lot of that infrastructure set up already. So
Mhm.
I would probably set it up using one of those. Like, I've got a Gumroad account. I did have an
Mhm.
ebook on there before. Then the next question then is, writing all of the marketing and sales, because you've got some sort of template and it does a job and you're able to describe it to your client. But actually turning that into like a sales page,
Mhm.
that's daunting.
Yeah. So, what is it? Benefits, not features, right? Not like this spreadsheet has 5,000 rows. Like nobody cares about that. What does it do for me? What is going to help me with? So I would think about that. But also with this kind of like beta philosophy, give it away to the first 10 people that respond on your email list for free. Here's a coupon, first 10 who get this in exchange for your testimonial. And then you can see the words that they're actually using and then you can turn that into your marketing copy. And also, like the sales page doesn't need to be so long, right? Like if it solves an important problem in a half a page of sales copy, like that's probably better. And again, if you're targeting those people, you're segmenting your email list, social media. Like if you know that the product is going to do well because people have asked you for it, you may not need to worry so much about that marketing copy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. One other thing that you mentioned earlier is about pricing. I know you gave pricing of, $500 for a course and $47 for a
Yeah,
template and things like that.
I'm
Um,
making stuff up.
yeah, yeah, but it is making stuff up. I mean, how can we try and figure out like what makes sense? Like, do we ask the market? Do we, like you could potentially vastly under or overprice here.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you think about that?
I think that so in terms of underpricing, I think a lot of people do want to underprice. And you know that if you see something that looks really valuable and it's like $10, you're like, wait, that probably isn't very good. So I would try not to underprice yourself. One way that you can do this is by having that small group of people. You might just need somebody to tell you, like, hey, I want to charge $29 for this. And they're like, no. Like you sometimes just need people to say, no, you need to charge more for that. But that may come with experience too, right? Like your first web project, my first web project, like we again had never done it before. And we now charge more than we used to. So the same with your product, you can charge more. And there are other ways you can do it. You can raise the price. You can say, like, hey, for 3 months, this is going to be X. And then in the spring, it's going to be Y. So get it now while it's a lower price. Like you can experiment with pricing in a number of ways. You can ask people, you can look at other related products. Um, there's just tons of things that you can look at. So I would try not to think about it too much. Probably price it a little bit higher than you initially think and test it out. You can always do sales, you can always lower it. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, and I would be in that boat where I would be afraid of it being, looking too cheap
Mhm.
because like there's a certain if you are selling expensive consulting type services, you don't want your digital products to kind of to damage your brand by being too cheap.
Yes, but again, like if it's just a template, if it's one template to do one thing, it doesn't need to be $500. Like it again, it could be small, it could be positioned small, but I have heard that before too. Yes, that like people don't want to, charge a lower amount because they think it will take away from the product. But again, look at the audience too. Like, is it for DIYers? That's just going to be a different price point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You talked about addressing real world problems. Can you dig into that a little bit for me?
So I think that we think we know what other people's problems are. Because maybe we have worked with clients and we're like, oh, every client that comes to me does this thing terribly. Like, I'm going to create a product and it's going to fix it. So I interviewed Sarah Dunn. I know you love Sarah on the podcast, and she did this. She was like, everybody writes their blog post terribly. If you're going to write a blog post, use this framework. And it didn't sell. She had a couple sales, but it didn't sell because it wasn't a problem that people thought was important. They were writing blog posts. They thought, like, okay, I'm writing blog posts, like that's good. Like that I it's better than not writing blog posts. The thought process wasn't, I should optimize this blog post. So she went to her audience, she asked them, they said they needed help with getting started. She's like, yeah, I can create that. And that's the product that she has now. And she has a lot of funnels that lead into her other services. So asking people again what their actual problems are instead of assuming. Now, we can use our assumptions to start with. We can say, hey, I think you might have this problem. Is that true or not? That's a fine place to start instead of like, hey, what are your problems? Because that might be a little bit open ended. But I would say asking your audience, and this is why creating content, creating that free content is so important, and building up that base, building up that authority, building up that email list, those social numbers. Like that way you have people to ask these questions to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're launching into an audience of 10 people, it doesn't matter how
Yes.
good your product is
Yes.
because, odds are you will get zero sales because,
Yes.
that you need people to be at a particular place in their journey at the right time for you as well. So I think
Right.
that's why
Right.
a larger audience is definitely better.
Right.
You talked about, Sarah having other products there, and Sarah is somebody I've had in the show before, and I'll link to her episode in the show notes. But that's something that I've been thinking about is, having too many products and maybe overwhelming people. can you talk a little bit about how you think about how the different products might fit together and how we don't how to avoid overwhelming our potential customers?
Right. So I think that showcasing the products that you do have and allowing people to kind of filter like what products might work for them is okay. Like, having 3, 4, 5 products, like, I think is still okay. I don't know that that is super overwhelming to people. Yeah, maybe when you have 20 products, maybe that would be a little bit much, but I think that you can use maybe bundles to your favor, like, these products are related, or these products are related, or if they're in some sort of email sequence and they identify that they have this specific problem, sending them to this bundle of 3 products or this, this one specific product. So, I think that there's ways that you people aren't just going to come to your website and look through your products and that's it. You have control over what you're marketing to who and when. So if you've segmented your email list and you know that this group of people is only going to be interested in these 3 products, you can just tell them about those products. They don't even know the other ones exist unless they go to your website and look at your stuff. So I don't know that the overwhelm as is as we think it is, where people are going to look at all your products and then be confused. Like, there's other ways they're going to come about learning about them.
Yeah, the other thing I think about that is that our audience is not as interested in us as we
Yeah.
sometimes think that they are. And,
Yeah.
even my biggest fan has not listened to every podcast episode. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
and and if you have, thank you. But I doubt it. I doubt it. And so people check our stuff out when they see it and it comes up
Mhm.
in their feed, but it doesn't come up all the time, and that's
Right.
okay. So yeah, that's the way I think about the overwhelm, is that people are less likely to see it than we think they are, because we're
Mhm.
creating it all,
Yes.
and so it's in our mind. Oh my God, I posted a tweet about this 6 months ago. I wonder if this is being too repetitive. No,
Right.
it's probably not being too
Yes.
repetitive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
is there anything that I haven't asked you about creating digital products that you think is really important?
We talked a lot about my favorites, about the validation, and I would say we talked a little bit about this, but the ongoing marketing I think is really important, because what I think happens is that people want to do this. They maybe finally get it together to do something. They launch it, and then nothing. Long time of nothing. Maybe it's on their website. They never look at it again and they never mention it again. So I definitely think having some kind of marketing plan, and I marketing plan sounds so formal, but really, like, your plan could be, I'm going to send 3 tweets a week, or I'm going to write 1 blog post a month, or I'm going to guest on 1 podcast a quarter. Like, it could be anything that you think you'll be able to do, like 1 email a month, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to just be like, here's my product, here's my product. You can talk about the problems and the solutions, all that good stuff. But I think having some kind of plan, and I would put a time limit on it, right? So, like, I launched this product, I'm going to do this stuff for 30 days, or I'm sorry, for 90 days, and then I'm going to look at it again. And then I'm going to determine what I'm going to do for the next 90 days, or the next, the remainder of the year, because I think that we need to break that time down into chunks so that we can revisit. Like, okay, so I have been doing 1 blog post a month. Has it done anything? We have to look at it and determine what to do going forward. It's an experiment.
Okay, let me try and summarize, because I like to recap
Sure.
these things for myself.
Mhm.
Okay, so first off, in starting out, we probably already have some sort of tool or framework or something that we can turn into our first product. So we probably need to do some sort of audit of our own content and frameworks and things that we do with our clients to see, is there something there. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to validate it as a product by saying, hey, would you be interested in something like this? Or the opposite, by going to our market, or going to our LinkedIn or our email list or former clients, and just asking them, hey, do you think something like this would be useful? Yeah. And
Yeah, I
then
would be
go ahead.
I can come back if you want to come back to it, if you wanna go the rest of the way.
No, let's dig into that.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just have to be careful when you ask and how you ask. So you want to like don't ask your mom, right? Because your mom's not your client. So make sure you're asking the right people and you want to make sure you don't put yourself in a position where they feel bad and they're like, "Yeah, sure, I'd buy that." And then when it comes time to buy it, nobody buys it. So kind of just like think about that stuff too. Like maybe you want to kind of surround yourself with a group of people who will give you honest feedback, or if some people will do a pre-sale so they can say like, "Hey, I'm thinking of creating this product. It's for sale now. And if you don't get, 10, 15, 20 sales, then you just don't build it and you refund the money." So that's kind of a way to validate too with like actual like opening of wallet. So,
Yeah, I really like that. And if you're set up, if you've got your system set up with something like Stripe, it's very easy to go in and hit
mhm,
refund if you
mhm,
don't get those. So it's very easy to do that.
mhm,
And so that brings me to the next point that you were talking about, which is use the existing systems that you have already. If you're already set up on Gumroad or you've got WooCommerce installed, then and you're familiar with those, just use what you've already got rather than setting up something convoluted. Create something fairly simple using the language of your clients, the way they talk about it, your customers, and use their testimonials from those first pre-orders that you got, and create a simple to start sales page with the product for sale. And then after you've launched it, remember to continue to market it, right?
mhm. Yeah,
So
somehow. Yeah.
is that a recap of most of the things? Is there anything I've
Yeah,
missed?
just one part, like the actual creation process of allocating time and protecting that time. That way you actually do create it. So how whatever is going to work for you to actually sit down and do it, whether it's telling a friend, whether it's like, oh, my computer won't open any of these sites until I work on my product for an hour, whether it's having a spreadsheet with like, I have a spreadsheet that each time you finish a task, the numbers change color and you can see, how close you are to your goal, whatever it is that actually gets you to create the product. That would just be in the creation process and creating
Yeah.
things that you actually like, right? Like, so don't force yourself to do video if you don't like video or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that would be one of the other things that, and I already said this earlier, that I think if you're going to do something like on video or audio even, that do some of that for free first, create
Yeah.
some free content just to
Mhm.
get some practice and get used to being on camera or on audio, and putting yourself out there, because it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and we should be creating that free content anyway, and that could be part of your ongoing marketing is I write a blog post, I write an email, like that's all free content that leads into your paid content.
Absolutely, and I mentioned at the start of this episode, I have an email list. I'm now sending every day or every weekday. I'm sending an email to my list, and so me talking about this now on this podcast on this live is promoting that. But also, what I found is that that helps to build my list.
Mhm,
Creating that content, the process of being forced to create that content because I've committed to it. I've committed to sending an email week daily.
mhm,
That's setting out an expectation and accountability as well, and that really
mhm.
helps. And
Yeah.
also, because you've got to come up with content every day, you've got to think of ideas. You're always looking around, you're always
Mhm.
looking for ideas. Oh, that could be relevant to the thing that I talk about. So
Right.
all of that feeds back, plus helps to build that audience, because then you don't have a list of 10, you've got a list of 100 or 200. And everybody starts at zero, so it's okay if you're at zero now, but
Yeah.
you do need to start to build it
Mhm.
up. Yeah.
Right, right. I would say one thing too we didn't really talk about is I would recognize, think about your goals. Like, is your goal to grow your list? Is your goal to sell X number of products in a certain amount of time or over the course of a year? And then actually recognize that you did it. Like, it takes a lot of, I think, courage to put yourself out there in this specific way. We're used to creating free content. We have that courage. We're used to selling our high ticket one-on-one services. We have that courage. This is a different kind of courage. So recognize that you did it. You've been wanting to do it. When you do it, don't just be like, "Oh, well, I didn't get any sales." Like, congratulate yourself that you did it. Like, that should be something that we think about too, not just like, "Oh, well, whatever." Like,
Wh- One thing,
recognize.
one thing that I think is kind of tied into that is making the product evergreen. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about that? Because I think that's important.
Yes. So I guess it really depends on your content. It is nice to have an evergreen product. You should still look at it, right? Like once a year, once every 2 years. But that will be definitely easier to sell than, hey, here's a tutorial on how to use WordPress, and then WordPress changes in 3 months. So I would think about what are kind of like the foundations of what you're sharing with your clients, what you're sharing with your peers, that kind of transcend any specific software or any specific version of something like that. Like like Profit First, that's kind of a framework. You can use this specific bank, you can use this specific spreadsheet, you can do all this kind of specific things, but the concepts. So if you kind of pull back and think about concepts versus like specific how to's, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's just something that what you were talking about there is, you might not get sales right away, but I know that a lot of sales of things like books happen over time, and
Oh, yes, yeah.
it can be a slow burn, but can also be very effective. So if you create something and put it out there, and okay, do the marketing every so often, but also be prepared for the fact that it may not sell instantly. But if it's a
Mhm.
self-serve thing, people will come along, and over time, that drip feed can actually turn into quite significant sales.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think looking at that goal, so I think whenever
Mhm,
you launch, saying like, okay, I will be happy if I get, this in this amount of time. Just not like
mhm.
I'll be happy if I get 10 sales. Like, because then you're like, okay, I just launched it. Where are the sales? Like, this is a product that will last. Like, that's the benefit of having a digital product. It's something that can continue to sell over time. So yeah, think about it kind of in a bigger scale, I suppose.
Awesome.
Also, I forgot to mention, so your ebooks are digital products already. So that is something I think we forget. An ebook is a great digital product.
Now that brings up another topic, and I know we're running out
Uh-oh.
of time, so I won't keep you too long on
Okay.
this. But that does bring up an interesting point. So I have some ebooks. I have a bundle of books that are all part of a series, the Expert Authority Builder series. And so those books are all on Amazon, and some of them are available for free on Amazon. But one of the things about having those books up on Amazon is the lack of control. And I don't have any contact information for people who've bought those books, for example.
Mhm.
How do you think about that, about the kind of the different platforms?
Yeah, so I think Amazon is great, but I think you do have to have some kind, and I think you do, some sort of like opt-in, like at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, all three places, like at the end of each chapter, of something else that you can give to people. I know I said, like, don't overwhelm people, but I think if you can give something else, I think it is nice, and then people will opt in, and then you can know who they are. So I do think that that is valuable. Just be careful that you're not like, and here's 500 workbooks to go with this, book. Like maybe like it's okay. I think that's another kind of insecurity that we have is we think like we have to offer so much more to justify charging X, or to justify the fact that like, oh, that we're a little bit insecure. Like you don't have to do that. Like enough, you're providing valuable information. Like it's okay. Like you don't have to give everything away. It's actually detrimental.
I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I ask everybody at the end of the
Okay.
podcast. What is the number one tip that you would give somebody who wants to build their authority?
I think you have to create some content. Like you have to write some things, you have to record some things, you have to share things. Like you're learning and you're sharing, you're teaching. Like I think you have to create that content in whatever form, ongoing, not just like, oh, I wrote a couple blog posts 3 years ago. No, that's not creating authority.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And even like I think of it when you're starting out as kind of documenting the journey or journaling.
Yeah. Mhm,
And even if you're not that advanced, it's okay to do that as well. Even if
mhm.
you can put your hand up and say, "Hey, I'm not that experienced, but this is what I've learned about this thing."
Yes, exactly. And you can change those things over time. So then when you learn even more, you can go back and update that old blog post or do another video that's like, okay, well, at this point, I only knew X, but now I know Y. Like, you can build upon what you already have.
And this is kind of related. Is there a mistake or failure that you've experienced that you can tell us about what you learned from it?
I made all the mistakes. Yeah, so I've launched some products too, and yeah, mostly because I was just like, "Oh, I wanna do this," or, "Oh, I think this is a problem that people have," but was not an important problem that people had. So, I think, I spent more than I made, I didn't market it ongoing, so, those are just a few of many mistakes. But I think if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not doing anything. So I think you need to be comfortable with doing something poorly at first so that you can get good later. Like you have to
Yeah,
be okay with just like it's not going to be good right off the bat. Like you've never done it. How would it be good? So you have to start it. And that's why I think it's good that your email list is smaller initially because you can make all those mistakes with the people that really just like you the most. And then you get better and better, and then more people join. So then you
yeah,
look really
yeah,
professional. So
yeah.
yeah,
I agree 100%. Is there a business book or resource that's been important for you?
I love business books. I really love Profit First and the 12-week year. Those are my two big go-tos that I have read over and over again and continue to follow. So I think those are really great books.
Awesome. And do you read fiction? Is there anything you love and recommend?
I don't read a ton of fiction. I can't even think of the last fiction book that I read.
Do
I
you
know
watch
I'm not.
TV, movies, anything like that?
I do watch TV and movies, but, my son and I are watching Psych. I've already seen it, but he has not seen it, so we are watching that currently, and my partner and I are watching Bones. I don't know that I would really recommend. Psych is pretty good. Bones, a little bit less so, but, not too gory, not too, kinda you don't have to think too much about it, right? So
Yeah, and sometimes it's nice to have that when our work is quite kind of intensive, mentally
mhm,
intensive. It's nice to have those. Like I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy books that are
mhm.
totally kind of brain dead, like bubblegum. It's just
Yes.
it's easy going, but it's because I think a lot when I'm working, so I don't want to have to
Mhm.
think when I'm not working.
Yeah, and also, like, having a show with Bones, there's, like, 12 seasons, like, 25 episodes per season. We don't have to think about, "What should we watch tonight?" And then, scroll through for a half an hour trying to find something. We're just like, next Bones, season
Yeah,
5,
the
episode 4."
reducing the number of decisions is always good as well.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
awesome.
100%.
Rene, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so I actually just got these t-shirts made. So we're streaming this. It's Scenic Route Digital, right there, scenicroutedigital.com. And then you'll find I have a couple lead magnets on there, a couple like small questions, workbooks, that kind of stuff if you're interested. I do send 2 emails a month. I know everybody's like, send more emails. 2 emails a month. I talk about, and I just share kind of like a little story, and then I recap the podcast episodes from that month, real short little summary. So that's what I have
And you
there.
have a show called Your First Digital Product.
Yeah, that would be great for me to tell people what the show is called.
So
Yes, it's
if
called
you're in your podcast player right now, you can check it
yes,
out at Your First Digital
yes,
Product.
exactly. Yeah, it's yfdp.show.
Awesome. Rene Morozowich, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was great to be here, and it's great to talk to you about